There comes a moment in every life when the light begins to fade, not because it dies, but because the eyes that once saw it grow tired. You wake up one day and the colors seem dimmer, the air heavier. Hope, once bright and effortless, flickers like a candle gasping for air. You start to wonder, where did the light go? Did heaven forget me? Did I somehow wander too far to be found again? The prayers you used to feel now sound like echoes in an empty room. The peace that once carried you feels distant, unreachable, but the truth is far simpler and far more beautiful. The light never left you. It only changed form. It hid itself in the ordinary, waiting for you to look again with different eyes. You see, the soul doesn't lose light. It forgets how to receive it. And forgetting is part of the journey. Because only in the dimness do you learn that faith is not about seeing, it's about remembering. Every dusk is just light rearranging itself. It never disappears, it transforms. The same sun that sets behind the mountains will rise again, just from another side, and the same light that warmed your spirit still glows quietly inside your chest, patient, unchanged. The darkness doesn't mean absence, it means invitation. It asks, will you still believe when you cannot see? Will you trust that what you once felt is still real? You stand there, surrounded by shadows, heart heavy but alive, and somewhere inside, a small warmth stirs. It's faint, fragile, but undeniable. It whispers not with words, but with memory. I'm still here. And that's how the light begins to return. Not in thunder, not in miracles, but in the quiet recognition that it never truly left. The greatest secret of the divine light is that it hides where you least expect it. Inside the very places you once called empty. When everything outside you grows dim, it is only to draw your eyes inward. There, beneath layers of noise, fear, and exhaustion, a quiet glow still lives. It has never flickered, never faded, only waited for your return. You don't need to chase the sun to find it. You only need to sit still long enough for the dust to settle. In that stillness, you will feel it, a warmth that doesn't depend on circumstance, a pulse that beats with purpose even when hope feels thin. This is the hidden glow within, the silent witness of every storm you've survived. The world taught you to look for proof in miracles, signs, and outcomes. But heaven hides its deepest truths in the ordinary, in a single breath, in the rhythm of rain, in the way your chest rises even after nights you thought would break you. The divine doesn't vanish when life turns dark. It simply changes its language. When it stops speaking through blessings, it begins to speak through endurance. When it stops shining around you, it begins to shine through you. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel the gentle pulse beneath your ribs, the one that has never stopped. That is not just biology, it is a message. You are still connected. The same energy that spins galaxies is keeping your heartbeat steady. The same light that painted dawn across creation still burns behind your sternum. You may not see it, but it feels you. It responds when you breathe, when you choose kindness, when you decide to keep walking even without clarity. That is faith, the willingness to glow even when the world goes dark. The hidden light within you does not need to be earned. It does not need to be proven. It only needs to be remembered. And when you remember, even faintly, something shifts. The shadows lose their power. The silence feels less empty, and the dark begins to look less like an enemy and more like a womb, a sacred space where new light is being born. When the noise of the world finally fades, a different kind of sound begins to rise. Not loud, not demanding, but steady and familiar. It's the voice you forgot to listen to. The one that doesn't argue, doesn't explain, doesn't insist. It simply is. This voice doesn't speak in words. It moves through moments. The hush before dawn, the warmth that follows forgiveness, the breath that fills your lungs after crying. It's the voice of light itself, not telling you where to go, but reminding you who you are. You've spent years searching for divine answers, written in clouds and thunder, but the truth was always closer, hidden in the rhythm of your own heartbeat, in the way your soul softens when it touches peace. The divine doesn't need volume to be real. It needs only attention. When you learn to be quiet, the voice becomes clear. It says things you already knew deep down, but forgot in the rush to fix, to prove, to become. It says, you are enough. It says, I never left. It says, you don't need to fight for love. You only need to stop running from it. The light doesn't shout because it knows its power. It doesn't need to convince you. It only needs to be seen. And in that quiet, you start to recognize it everywhere. The world that once felt heavy begins to shimmer, not because it changed, but because you did. You start hearing heaven in the spaces between sounds, in the pause after a sigh, in the silence before a word, in the breath that follows pain. And slowly, you begin to understand the voice of God was never gone. You had just forgotten the language of peace. The quiet is not empty, it's sacred. It's the place where faith stops being theory and becomes breath. And in that space, light becomes not something you seek, but something you remember. The light never rushes back. It returns gently, like dawn unfolding across a sleeping world. At first, it's only a hint, a warmth on your skin, a softness in the air, a faint color returning to what had turned gray. You almost miss it, because it doesn't come with noise or spectacle. It comes like grace, quietly, faithfully, inevitably. The soul recognizes it before the eyes do. A stillness grows inside you, not because everything is solved, but because something deeper has settled. The questions remain, but they no longer burn. The wounds are still there, but they no longer define you. Peace, fragile yet profound, begins to bloom in the spaces where pain once ruled. This is how the light works, not by erasing the dark, but by teaching you to see within it. Every scar becomes a window, every silence becomes a song, every delay becomes a design. You begin to understand that the divine never abandoned you. It was holding you still until you could see differently. When the light returns, you realize it was never gone, only hidden behind your need for certainty. It waited patiently for your surrender. And now, as it touches your life again, it does not come to blind you with glory, but to remind you of what was always true. You were never alone. You start noticing miracles disguised as ordinary things, the kindness of a stranger, the laughter you thought you'd forgotten, the small peace that arrives in the middle of chaos. These are the footprints of the light, the evidence of a love too quiet to announce itself, yet too powerful to hide. The gentle return of light isn't a moment, it's a realization. It's when you stop asking for proof and start recognizing presence. It's when you look around and realize the sacred was here all along, in the stillness, in the waiting, in you. Love has never once left you. It may have changed its form, its sound, its way of reaching you, but it has always been here. It followed you through the silence. It held you through the breaking. It waited while you wandered. It does not accuse. It does not demand. It simply stays. You don't find love. You remember it. It is not something that comes from the outside, but something that awakens from within. Like embers beneath ashes, it only takes one breath of awareness for it to glow again. The divine love that sustains all creation has been humming quietly inside your heartbeat, patient and unafraid. When you remember love, everything changes. Your anger softens, your fears lose their voice. Even your pain begins to look different, not as a curse, but as a teacher. Because love doesn't erase wounds, it transforms them into wisdom. You begin to see the divine not as something distant, but as something intimate, a presence that doesn't live in temples made by hands, but in the breath that fills your chest. You start to recognize it in everything, in the way the sun warms your face, in the laughter that rises after sorrow, in the stillness that greets you when you choose to forgive. Love is not a reward for the faithful. It is the air we breathe, unnoticed until we pause. It is the thread that connects every soul, every story, every sunrise. And when you remember it, you see the world as it truly is. Broken, yes, but also beautiful. The remembering of love is not the end of your journey, it's the renewal of it. Because once you know you are loved, you begin to live differently. You speak with more kindness, you listen with more patience, you walk with more peace, and slowly your life becomes what it was always meant to be, a reflection of the love that never left. The moment you rediscover the light within, you begin to see it everywhere else, in faces you once overlooked, in voices you once ignored, in the quiet grace of people simply existing, carrying their own invisible burdens with silent strength. The divine never meant for light to be kept, it was always meant to be shared. Every time you offer kindness, every time you choose compassion instead of judgment, you become a mirror of heaven. You turn pain into purpose and silence into song. And though you may not notice it, someone watching you will, and their own light will flicker back to life. You start to understand that the world's healing doesn't depend on perfection, but on recognition. When you recognize the divine spark in another soul, even one hidden under layers of anger or fear, something miraculous happens. Both lights grow brighter. The sacred expands when it's acknowledged, and love multiplies when it's given away. Every human encounter becomes holy ground. A glance, a gesture, a simple act of care. All of it can become a sanctuary where the divine reveals itself. You realize you don't need great sermons or sacred buildings to experience God. Sometimes all it takes is listening to someone's story with an open heart. And when you see others as bearers of the same light, your loneliness begins to fade. You start to feel the heartbeat of creation, billions of tiny flames, all connected, all breathing the same divine rhythm. The truth dawns quietly: you were never alone in your searching. We are all fragments of one eternal light, remembering our way back home. The world is not a battlefield of darkness and light. It's a tapestry of both, woven by grace, and every soul you meet carries a thread of heaven. When you love them, you help the universe remember itself. Healing does not arrive with thunder or sudden change. It comes the way dawn comes, quietly, faithfully, one breath at a time. For a long time, you may not even notice it working. The pain still aches, the memories still sting, but beneath it all the light moves, patient, deliberate, tender. It does not erase what happened, it transforms what remains. You start to realize that healing isn't about forgetting, it's about making peace with what you can't change and trusting that it no longer defines you. The light that heals does not judge your wounds. It honors them. It sees the places where you've been torn and says, "Even here, I can dwell." It turns your cracks into entryways, your brokenness into a window for grace. You learn to forgive, not because the past was right, but because the future deserves peace. And when you forgive, the light pours through the spaces that pain once filled. Your breath becomes easier, your eyes softer. You begin to see that every scar carries proof. You survived, and something holy stayed with you through it all. The divine doesn't heal by removing pain, it heals by filling it with meaning. The nights that once crushed you now become your testimony. The tears you shed water the roots of compassion. The silence that haunted you becomes the place where wisdom whispers. One day, you catch yourself smiling again. Not because everything is perfect, but because you finally feel whole. That's when you know the healing light has done its work. It doesn't change your past, it changes your presence. And from that healed presence, everything else begins to bloom. Because healing is not an ending, it's the moment your soul remembers how to shine again. When the light heals, it doesn't stay still. It begins to move again, leading you gently, silently, toward what's next. You no longer walk in fear, because even when you don't know the destination, you trust the direction. The divine doesn't always show you the full path, only the next step, softly illuminated beneath your feet. That's how heaven guides, not with maps, but with moments. A feeling that says, "Turn here," a peace that whispers, "Stay there." a sudden knowing that you don't need to rush anymore. The guidance of light is subtle, but once you learn its rhythm, you start to recognize it everywhere. The stars above you are ancient, yet their light still finds its way through darkness. It's a message written across time. What is meant for you will not be lost. Even when clouds cover the sky, the stars are still there, patient, unwavering, faithful. So is the divine presence that leads your life. It never stops shining, only waits for you to look up again. The light that guides doesn't promise ease, it promises purpose. It doesn't remove obstacles, it teaches you how to walk through them with grace. It doesn't always prevent storms, it becomes the compass that leads you safely across. Faith, you realize, isn't knowing what's ahead, it's walking anyway. Every time you trust the unseen, you become part of its unfolding. You stop chasing signs and start following peace. You stop begging for answers and start listening to the still voice that says, "This way." And even when the road bends, when the night feels long, the light continues, always one step ahead, never abandoning, never gone. Because the light that guides doesn't live in the sky, it lives inside you. And as long as you walk in faith, you will never truly lose your way. There comes a moment when you stop searching for the light because you realize you have become it, not because you are perfect, but because you are present. You no longer chase what once felt distant. You carry it wherever you go. The divine is no longer something you reach for. It breathes through you, moves in you, shines from you. Every word you speak becomes a spark. Every act of kindness becomes a sunrise. Every breath, a quiet prayer whispered into the rhythm of the universe. The light doesn't just visit you anymore. It lives through you, guiding, healing, creating. You start to notice that peace follows you into rooms, that people breathe easier in your presence, not because you've changed the world, but because you've changed how you see it. You no longer react to darkness, you respond with calm. You no longer run from pain, you meet it with compassion. You've become the space where heaven meets earth, silently, naturally, beautifully. And you understand now that the journey was never about finding something outside. It was about remembering what was placed inside you before you even began. The divine light is not a reward. It's your origin. It's the inheritance of every soul that dares to love despite the weight of the world. When others look at you, they may not see flames or halos, but they'll feel warmth. They'll feel safety. They'll feel something sacred moving in ordinary moments. That's what light does. It reveals God not through spectacle, but through presence. And in that presence, you finally rest, because you no longer need to chase what was never lost. The light that once felt far away has found its reflection in your eyes. And heaven smiles, because the light has become you. In the end, you discover there was never an end, only another beginning wrapped in light. Everything you thought was lost was only waiting to be seen differently. The silence, the darkness, the tears, they were not punishments, they were sacred doors, leading you back to the eternal presence that never ceased to love you. Now you understand, the light of God doesn't fade. It doesn't age, doesn't weaken, doesn't wander. It flows through every heartbeat, every dawn, every act of grace unfolding quietly across time. It was there when you were born. It will be there when you take your final breath. And beyond even that, it will keep shining, because love never dies. You are not walking toward the light, you are walking with it. Every step, every breath, every moment of surrender is part of its rhythm. It moves through you, healing the world one quiet soul at a time. And when you forget, because sometimes you will, the light will find you again, whispering like the first morning, "I never left." The night may fall again, but you will no longer fear it. Because you now carry your own dawn. You've become what you were always meant to be, a reflection of eternity in motion. And when others see you, they'll see more than a person. They'll see a reminder that heaven still walks the earth. So rest now, not because your journey is over, but because your eyes have learned to see. The darkness was never your enemy. It was the canvas where the light revealed its glory. And now, wherever you go, whatever you face, you will remember the light that guides, the light that heals, the light that became you was never gone. It was always here. It was always you.